Welcome back, Defenders. Let's start today's video by celebrating. In my last update video, the exit results were coming in, but we didn't have the final results. And Romanian voters rejected the Make Romania Great Again candidate in favor of the pro-Western candidate. The win of Nicolae Dan, who defeated the pro-Russian nationalist Simeon, means continued support and aid for Ukraine that was being threatened by his opponents. Romania's new president, Nicolae Dan, he's a math prodigy and a graft fighter. And this guy's a math genius. He has a PhD in mathematics, two-time winner of a math Olympiad, both times with a perfect score. I didn't know who this guy was a week ago, but now I like him. So let's take a moment and enjoy this victory. This was a very important win politically for Ukraine. And here is Dan taking to the balcony on election night after he won. Nicolae. Has a math nerd ever been celebrated like that before? And this was a surprise result because the Romanian diaspora turned out en masse for the second round of elections. So here is the 2019 voter participation for Romanian citizens living outside of Romania, and it basically mirrored the 2025 first round of voting. But because the news got out, this guy was so pro-Russian, Romanians living abroad turned out to vote, and in the second round, it looks like 600,000 additional voters turned out in this election, most of whom were voting for the pro-EU candidates rather than the Romanian nationalist. I can also show you the breakdown voting by counties. You can see the more urban and probably the more educated, the more likely they were to vote for Dan, whereas if they were less educated or more rural, more likely to vote for the nationalist candidate. It's kind of a consistent pattern across most Western democracies that this is how this turns out. So here is President Zelensky's reaction. I spoke with the newly elected president of Romania. I congratulated him on his victory in the presidential election. It is essential that Romania continues to develop and that we all cooperate together in our region and across Europe. This was very important for Ukraine and also Moldova because of the shared border. I invite Dan to visit Ukraine. We also discuss the nearest opportunities for us to meet. Yes, I do think the newly elected president of Romania will make a trip to Kyiv, probably in the next couple months. There's also another election occurring in Poland. The first round was also 2 days ago. Russia boosts info war to divide Poles ahead of election, according to Ukrainian intelligence. There is a pro-EU mayor and then a nationalist candidate set for a Polish presidential runoff. These were the results from the first round of voting. How I think it works in Poland is the top two will then have a runoff election on June 1st. This guy, I don't want to attempt to say his name, he's the pro-EU, pro-UK presidential candidate. And then there's this guy. He's not pro-Russian, but he's more of a Polish nationalist, more of a EU skeptic. Russia just favors whoever will create more disorder and dysfunction within NATO and the European Union. So in general, I hope any of my Polish viewers, they support and vote for this candidate. Between these two, he's better for Ukraine, and this is a single-issue political channel. Okay, so let's talk about this phone call that took place on Monday. Trump calls Putin and push for Ukraine's ceasefire. And it's important to remember, to remind everyone, European leaders and Zelensky are talking to Trump before he talks to Putin, and then they talk to Trump after he talks to Putin. And everyone is treating Trump like a 5-year-old, but he needs it, because Trump is easily distracted, and Trump can't stay on task. So here is what Zelensky says. I spoke with President Trump twice today. First, we had a one-on-one call before his conversation with Putin. Later, we spoke together with European leaders. This is a defining moment. The world can now see whether its leaders are truly capable of securing a ceasefire and achieving real, lasting peace. Zelensky's just going through the motions. He knows what's going on, but he has to play along for now. Donald Trump had his 2-hour phone conversation with Putin and then put out this stupid text, this stupid tweet. And I'll give you the summary from Joshi. He is an editor with The Economist. Back to square one. Trump abandons his own ceasefire demands without a whimper. U.S. peace proposal presented in Paris was cast aside. No hint whatsoever of pressure on Russia to soften draconian demands. Dangles a giant carrot, trade, implicitly to end sanctions, but offers no stick to the Russians. We can ignore this tweet. Donald Trump, I'll explain to you exactly what he's doing. It's stupid, but nobody in Europe is fooled. I don't even think people in the Trump administration is fooled at this point. But let's start dissecting what happened yesterday. We're going to go to President Putin first. This was Putin's reaction to the media after completing his phone call with Donald Trump. First of all, I thank the President of the United States for the U.S. support for the resumption of direct negotiations between Russia and Ukraine on a possible conclusion of the peace agreement, the resumption of negotiations that were interrupted by the Ukrainian side. As you know, back in 2022, the President of the United States expressed his position on the cessation of hostilities, the truce, and from my end, noted that Russia is also in favor of a peaceful settlement of the Ukrainian crisis. We should simply identify the most effective ways to move towards peace. We have agreed with the President of the United States that Russia will propose and is ready to work with the Ukrainian side on a memorandum on a possible future peace treaty, defining several points, such as, for example, the principles of settlement, the terms of a possible conclusion of the peace agreement, and so on, including a possible ceasefire for a certain period of time if appropriate agreements are reached. By the way, contacts between the participants of the meeting and the negotiations in Istanbul have resumed, which gives us reason to believe that in general we are on the right track. No, we're not. What the hell was that? After Trump's call to Putin, Ukraine says it is possible to sign a peace memorandum with Russia. What is Putin's delay tactic now? What BS did he feed Trump? And he said he wants to negotiate a peace memorandum with Ukraine about the future, which might, in the future, lead to a ceasefire. Once we get the ceasefire, in the future, far down the road, maybe a peace deal. Well, that sounds stupid. Russia is still demanding Ukraine's surrender after the 2-hour phone conversation with Trump. Putin is confident Russia can seize all 4 of these Ukrainian oblasts by the end of the year, even though his own military doesn't believe that. Putin believes that, if the United States abandons all of their support for Ukraine. Zelensky dismisses Putin's demand to withdraw their troops from the 4 Ukrainian regions. Putin and the Russians are asking the impossible. Donald Trump is ready to give Putin the best deal imaginable. Just keep everything you've taken. Freeze the contact line, create a new DMZ or whatever, but stop going for more. And Putin is telling the world no. He wants the administrative border of Donetsk. He wants the city of Zaporizhia, 700,000 people. He wants the city of Kherson back, pre-war population 300,000, plus access to the north bank of the river. Just for a ceasefire, not even to end the war. Even if Zelensky, which he would never do, agreed to this, the people of Zaporizhia would never surrender their city. The peoples of Sloviansk and Kramatorsk would never surrender the city. The people of Kherson would never surrender their city, even if the president in Kyiv told them they had to. It's just not going to happen. People are going to continue resisting. Trump says Russia and Ukraine to immediately start ceasefire talks after Putin call. This was not the goal. Trump said he could end the war in 24 hours, and we're now 120 days into his administration, and he's no longer even calling for a ceasefire. He's calling for talks to talk about a potential ceasefire. Trump says he can trust Putin and he won't sanction Russia, says he is prepared to back away from Ukraine peace talks. Trump is lying. J.D. Vance is lying. They're not going to back away from peace talks. They're not going to disengage because they can't. The European Union is America's largest trading partner. There are over 1 million American citizens living and working in Europe. The President of the United States cannot just ignore the largest land war in Europe since World War II. So they've been doing this for over a month now. Trump and J.D. Vance and Marco Rubio have been threatening, if these two sides don't agree on a ceasefire or a peace deal, then the United States is going to walk away. But that's not going to happen. So let's actually dissect this tweet, because Trump is signaling what he wants. In this tweet, he talks about trade, which is very weird. He says, Russia wants to do large-scale trade with the United States when this catastrophic bloodbath is over. And I agree. This is a tremendous opportunity for Russia to create massive amounts of jobs and wealth. Its potential is unlimited. Likewise, Ukraine can be a great beneficiary of trade, blah, blah, blah. Nobody really knows why Donald Trump is so obsessed with US-Russia trade, when US-Russia trade has always been near non-existent. Trump believes there is huge potential for US-Russia trade, but in the last 30 years, the highest level of US exports to Russia was only $11 billion, out of a total US export of $2.3 trillion in 2013. In other words, US exports to Russia amount for 0.5% of all of our trade. US-Russia trade is a rounding error. You can look at the GDP of Russia and compare it to other countries. As far as the size of global economies, Russia is number 11, just above Spain and slightly below Brazil. Would Donald Trump ever talk about the unlimited economic potential of Spain? Or the unlimited economic potential of trade with Brazil? Canada has a larger economy than Russia, and Donald Trump says that Canada is basically worthless. It's an appendage of the United States that should be annexed. Canada is a rounding error, but for some reason Russia has unlimited trade potential with the United States. And this is about corruption. This is about Trump wanting a bribe, either from the Russians or the Europeans. He doesn't care, as long as he gets paid. Donald Trump's first overseas visit in his first term was to Saudi Arabia, and Donald Trump's first overseas visit in his second term was to Saudi Arabia, because he's looking for a bribe for both him and his family. Trump lifts Syria sanctions, agrees to sell Saudi Arabia $142 billion in arms. You can have a mixed opinion on the new leader of Syria. He's a former al-Qaeda fighter, but he's better than Bashar al-Assad. And you can have mixed opinions on Saudi Arabia and the Crown Prince MBS, but he's also a murderer. But Donald Trump loves these guys. He loves going to palaces and meeting with princes and observing all of the gold and marble and ceremonies, and the fact that in this man's country you can't criticize him. Anybody in Saudi Arabia who criticizes the Crown Prince is murdered. And Donald Trump loves that. He loves dictators and he just wants a bribe. So I'm going to spell it out for you. Deals According to the White House, deals that Trump signed with Qatar will generate at least $1.2 trillion for the United States. This is a made-up number. It is monetarily impossible for Qatar to do $1.2 trillion of business with the United States when Qatar's entire GDP is only $213 billion. The entire economic output of this tiny country, it's a wealthy oil kingdom, but they're very small relative to the size of America's economy. Their GDP is only $213 billion, and the White House is claiming America is going to get $1.2 trillion from them. No, that is impossible. Qatar cannot spend 5 years of their entire economic output in trade deals with the United States. So the Saudis know this. The Emiratis know this. The Qatarians know this. They're just making up numbers. And Donald Trump loves it. He gets to brag on social media and tell his followers that he's making trillions of dollars of deals with the Gulf states when this isn't going to happen. None of this is real. How many legally binding trade agreements has Donald Trump signed in the first 120 days of administration? And it's zero. Because Congress has not voted on anything. It's all made up. If Qatar wanted to say they were doing $10 trillion worth of deals with Donald Trump, Trump would have said, it's true. We're doing $10 trillion worth of deals with Qatar. It's all fake, guys. So what is Donald Trump looking for? Why does he keep talking about trade? And he wants a bribe for him and his family. Some kind of deal where there will be corruption and slush funds will be created, money is moved around, and Donald Trump and his children directly benefits. Trump doesn't care who bribes him first, the Russians or the Europeans. He just wants some grand deal worth trillions of dollars that he can brag about to his followers on social media. And the funny thing is Russia doesn't want to do it. Russia's economy is $2 trillion. So announcing an aluminum deal or Arctic trading routes or a gas deal worth $1 trillion, like Trump isn't going to waste his time on anything unless it's got a big number with a T, a trillion at least. And the Russians aren't doing what he wants, but Trump isn't willing to close the door entirely. Here's the good news. I do think Donald Trump is getting frustrated. I do think Donald Trump is going to increase pressure on the Russians, but he doesn't want to publicly say it. He's going to have other people do it for him. He is never going to say anything critical of Putin or the Russians because he wants to keep the door open in the future for getting a nice bribe from either Putin himself or whoever replaces Putin in the future. So this is Trump's problem. Over 60% of Americans believe Putin is stalling the peace talks and they're wasting the United States' time. Public support for Ukraine is popular here in the United States. Most Americans don't like Russia, and they think what the Russians are doing in Europe is terrible. Donald Trump likes being popular. Donald Trump can commit more corruption if he has popular support. So Trump is just allowing things to happen, even though this isn't what he wants to do. Strong EU sanctions are coming soon. The United States is expected to sanction Russian banks, according to President Zelensky. So somebody in Trump's government is telling Zelensky this. EU is coordinating next Russia sanctions with the United States, according to the German government. So somebody in Trump's government is talking to the German government saying, yes, increased sanctions are coming. EU likely to propose lowering the G7 price cap on Russian oil to $50 per barrel. It's currently set at $60, and because oil prices have fallen anyways, the G7 wants to lower this to $50. But this is meaningless unless the United States participates in the price cap. So somebody in Trump's government is talking to G7 leaders saying, yes, we're going to go along with this. And I've told you guys, MAGA is almost evenly divided, whether or not they want to support Ukraine and defeat Russia, or they want to call themselves isolationists and just allow Russia to do whatever they want. But the pro-Russia faction of MAGA has been very quiet the last month. Elon Musk has basically all but disappeared. Elon Musk says he'll spend a lot less time and money on US politics. Elon Musk plans to cut back on political spending. Elon Musk is no longer talking about Russia. He is no longer publicly supporting Russia or retweeting Russian fascists. We're also getting statements within Trump's government. I trust the US Treasury Secretary, Scott Bessent. I think it's him and his team who are talking to foreign leaders about increasing sanctions on Russia, and this is going to be unveiled, but Trump's not going to be the one to say it or do it. He'll probably just have Rubio or Bessent make the public announcements. And then there's retired Lieutenant General Keith Kellogg. He has not been fired. He is still around. Here's what he's saying. In Istanbul, Secretary Rubio made it clear that we have presented a strong peace plan. Coming out of the London meeting, we came up with a comprehensive 22-point plan that is a framework for peace. The first point is a comprehensive ceasefire that stops the killing now. That is what President Trump wants. And then there's all these minor things. The F-16 pilots that are going to be trained here in Arizona, the sale of equipment, the approval of the transfer of the Patriot system from Israel to Ukraine. The United States resumes Black Sea high-altitude drone surveillance after an 11-month absence. So this is the Global Hawk surveillance drone that it's launched from Sicily. But the United States is doing surveillance of the Russians and providing this intelligence to Ukraine. They wouldn't be doing this if Donald Trump didn't want it to happen, or if Donald Trump stopped it. The United States allows Australia to send Abrams tanks to Ukraine despite private objections. Last year, Australia announced they were going to send 49 decommissioned Abrams tanks to Ukraine. And the United States said, please don't do that. We're engaged in peace talks with Russia. Australia told the United States to get bent, and they were going to send the tanks anyways. And Trump's government folded and said, fine, you can send the tanks. Trump's not stopping the transfer of military equipment to Ukraine if it, has a U.S. export license. This is all good news. You just have to read between the lines. And then there are very powerful and influential MAGA influencers that have been very aggressive towards Russia the last 2 months. Piers Morgan is a favorite of mine, but here's Ben Shapiro, once again on his daily broadcast, talking about the Russians and how they're not our friends, and they're not cooperating, they don't want peace, and they're going to continue these wars. So I'll play a little bit of this Ben Shapiro clip.
So again, it's going to be very unclear as to what happens from here. But it should be made clear at this point that Vladimir Putin does not actually want anything like a negotiated peace that sets the lines where they are. He does not want that. Vladimir Putin believes the United States will eventually walk away. And hell, if you were Vladimir Putin, you'd probably believe that too. The United States has, over the course of the last 20 years, walked away from the Kurds, the Afghans, the people of Hong Kong, and now maybe the people of Ukraine. So why wouldn't they? I mean, really, that is the game that Vladimir Putin is playing. He's playing the long game here.
Does Donald Trump and his government want to abandon Ukraine and see the city of Zaporizhia destroyed, the city of Kharkiv destroyed, the city of Odessa destroyed slowly over the next several years? These headlines are never going to go away. Reporters are never going to stop asking Trump questions. Trump can't make a deal with the Russians to make them stop, so he has no choice. Eventually, Trump is going to have to allow his subordinates to get aggressive and force the Russians to stop this war somehow. He can't walk away. What are the Russians saying about all of this? Here's the latest clip from Russia Media Monitor. Russian pundits say Trump's peace plan won't lead to peace. Shocker. Let me read this for you. If Russia doesn't agree to compromise, to make significant concessions, Trump, is ready to impose serious sanctions against the buyers of Russian oil. He is ready to do it. Michael, the fact that Russia is talking to the other side, that is on the verge of military defeat. So this is the Russians claiming that Ukraine is on the verge of military defeat. Isn't this a concession? Trump himself said this is a concession, but it's insufficient. Yes, he said that he is simply amazed and was glad when he found out, and these are his words, that it turns out Russia no longer wants all of Ukraine. Where did he get this idea? What makes him think so? Trump said this in an interview like a week ago that Russia has given concessions. They're not trying to take the entire country, and this is the Russians refuting that, saying, where did Trump get this crazy idea? But for him, this is the main concession. He really believes that Russia will agree to freeze it on a permanent basis like the Korean option. He is seriously thinking he has already achieved the most important thing, that Russia is ready to stop along the current front line. Does he, Trump, want a confrontation with Russia? Of course, he doesn't want a confrontation with Russia. He wants to come to the Middle East and be gifted planes, those flying palaces. He wants to tell American voters who support him about trillions of dollars. This is what he will be doing. He wants a prize. He has the money, but he wants a prize. He wants a crown. When Putin set a meeting in Istanbul, he made an appointment, so to speak, but we don't know how it may be turned against him. Only our soldiers can drag everything over to our side. We're following our own path. We are continuing the special military operation. The goals of our special military operation have to be achieved along with our security. This is the Russians on Kremlin state TV saying, whoever said we were going to stop? If Putin wants all of Ukraine, we will continue going until we take all of Ukraine. We'll stick with the story, guys. This is getting interesting. I do think we have another month or so of this nonsense, but by late June or July, I do think the Trump administration is going to get serious about bone-crushing sanctions being placed on the Russian economy. I also want to mention this story. It's not really getting a lot of attention. Russia to launch ICBM Sunday as show of intimidation. This is what Ukrainian intelligence reported, and the State Department also put out an advisory warning in Kyiv. So the U.S. also had this intelligence that Russia was going to test launch an ICBM, potentially on a Ukrainian city. They did this with the Orshnik last year. The ICBM didn't have a warhead. There was no nuclear device, but the fragments of the dummy re-entry vehicle did land on the city of Dnipro. So there was speculation that Putin was going to launch an ICBM test on Kyiv and just let, the fragments land where they land. But where's the missile? No sign of Russia's Yars ICBM launch. Russia tried to launch a nuclear-capable intercontinental ballistic missile, and nothing happened. No roar, no flash, just silence over Severodolvetsk. And we didn't get a report that something blew up in the hole like last time. It's possible Putin delayed the launch because of all this peace talk stuff happening this week. Or Russia tried to launch another ICBM and it failed to go off. This happened in September of last year. Russia tried to launch an RS-28 Sarmat ICBM. This was a test, and it blew up in the hole. These are potentially some of my favorite satellite images from this entire war. I used to be an ICBM operator for the U.S. Air Force on the Minuteman III. And look at these pictures. So here's the building. It's the same building, and that is an ICBM blowing up in the hole. Russia's got problems. Russia's got serious problems. And I know if they tried to launch all of their ICBMs or nuclear weapons, there would be a significant failure rate. Very high. Not 100% failure. Some of them would still succeed. We have to take the threat serious. But Russia's got problems. Let's get to the good news for Ukraine. Poland seizes tons of illegal Boeing jet tires bound for Russia in a major EU sanctions breach. Russia is desperate for more tires for their Boeing fleets, and they were trying to smuggle them in, pretending they were, like tractor tires or something, but Poland caught them. They're going to confiscate the tires. Denmark announces nearly $600 million in military aid for Ukraine. Thank you so much to the people of Denmark. All right, here's an update on Project Konstantin. I mentioned this fundraiser that had been stalled out. The volunteers with Project Konstantin reached out to me. I mentioned it here on the channel. And in the last 4 days, you guys have donated over 100,000 euros to their charity. They're very ecstatic. I want to give a quick shout out to people who have recently donated. I can see your contributions on the donor wall. Thank you so much to Bruno, Francis, Al, Stephen, Coco Cook, Susan Newman, Dale, Kevin, Elaine, Philippe, Berger, and the people at Project Konstantin. This is a NGO. They also want to thank you for your contributions. This is Yana, wanting to thank everyone with the channel.
Hey Jake, it's Yana from Project Konstantin. I just want to say thank you so much for the shout out you gave our raffle. Your community has been like mind-blowingly amazing. Since you've made that announcement, people have donated over 100,000 euros to our to all our fundraisers together, and it's amazing because it means we are able to help the guys. And one of the most difficult parts of our job as an NGO is having to tell defenders, like, sorry, we cannot help you, we do not have the money for this. So this is such a big thing for us because it means that we can help more people. So I just want to say thank you to you and to your community for helping, and don't know where we would be without people from around the world who care about Ukraine and who do their part to help. Thank you so much. Slava Ukraini.
All the donations go towards benefiting Pete's military units. They're going to buy vehicles, medical equipment, drones, and essential gear. If you still want to donate, once again, I'll put the link down below if you want to kick in $5 or $10. Thank you so much to everyone. This really does mean a lot to the people of Ukraine, knowing that people around the world are still engaged, still supporting. That's all for this update video. Glory to Ukraine, glory to the heroes. If you found this video informative, give me a thumbs up. Best way to support the channel. Comments and questions, let me know down below. I love hearing from you guys. Till the next video, keep defending the truth, keep defending democracy.